if we look at First Timothy 3, we really drill down on that. It's not saying what people are trying to tell you it says. And you have to first look at when Peter was saying that Jesus was the Messiah. And then Jesus said, on this rock I will build my assembly. And he said, so it wasn't that he was saying, Peter, yes, his name is Peter, he is rock. What do you build things with but rocks? In fact, they weren't allowed to, have a hewn stone or whatever. So he's letting you know, like, God, something God made. And rocks are that. They are not made by man. Um, and so we are rocks. We are containers of God when we become a true believer and we actually have Jesus in us. When we come together, we are building something, we are assembling. See, the word church has been redefined. And so we think of it as this place we go to or this denomination or system that we're in. That's not it. We are containers of the Lord. He's in us. So when we all come together, we build something. We are assembled for something. So we need to look at that. Because if you look at that wrong, you're not going to understand the rest of Scripture. So then you go to First Timothy. So that was a different verse. I can't remember where. But then you go to First Timothy 3, and it's talking about, Paul was talking about how, what it is to be an overseer, what it is to be a deacon, what it is to be a elder. And when you look at all these definitions, and they're in other places too, it's basically, a man of one wife and has children, and the children are reverent. So they're not little babies. This, and I think it's why it's called an elder, somebody who is older. And they're not a new believer, because it says if you, put somebody new or you put somebody young, it says they can get puffed up and so prideful because there's something in the church, even though they're young. So you're not supposed to have somebody like that. So when it's telling you that you have to be married and have children, it's because that's a qualification. In order to take care of the family of God, you have to have a family of your own. So, and then it lists all these other things. But see, that's very important. So then you go down further, right after when Paul is talking about, what makes the qualifications, and it tells you like that right after that, it's telling you that it's about Jesus, that it is him that we contain. And this, I wish I could bring my Bible on my walk so I could point to it. But when you have that basic understanding, you can already tell that things have been so messed up. So now, and right after that, in First Timothy 3, it's saying that one day there's going to be people who come in and say they're going to forbid marriage, and they're going to have doctrines of demons. So you have to be like, okay, what church is doing that? Forbidding marriage. So how can you be a deacon, an overseer, and an elder if you aren't allowed to marry? I mean, that's like the first qualification. That is telling you who's allowed to be a leader, who isn't. So if you say that you can't marry to be a priest, you are disqualified from being a leader because you haven't taken care of your own family. And if people say, well, they've now taken, care of God for a long, God's family for a long time, they're not legitimate because they weren't ever legitimate leaders. Not that they're not good men. I'm sure many of them are, and they're just kind of stuck in this tradition. But that doesn't mean that they are qualified based on scripture. And it even is rebuking that someday there's going to be people who forbid marriage, and then they're going to and that is going to cause them to have doctrine of demons. Now, what does a demon do? What does the Satan do? He corrupts something. That he doesn't invent anything. He corrupts things that are already in place that are good. So when you bring in people like that, now they've corrupted what is a deacon, what is an overseer. And they might have different names for it, but that's what it is. A bishop, whatever, it'd be like an overseer. So now it's been corrupted. It just means it has been ruined or whatever, because that's what Satan does. And so then everything coming off of that ends up being where something is true and it has now been corrupted. So that is something we have to look into. People are being put into positions and they are not meeting the basic qualifications. And we have to, as a church, recognize this. Even if you like it, it doesn't matter what you like. It doesn't matter what you're used to. And I'm not picking on the Catholics, because there is tons of uh, you know, Protestant denominations that do the same. See these young guys in there, maybe they have one little kid or whatever, and they're doing the same thing because it says that you have had to have some experience in parenting. There's tons of people who have been divorced and they are, um, you know, being a leader or an elder of that church. Now, we have to also define terms. So somebody might be a pastor, but it doesn't tell us what are the qualifications of a pastor. And so that means anybody can be a pastor, or a preacher even, because we're all expected to preach and be able to, tell people about Jesus, right? So it's because all the terms have been messed up and all the jobs have been messed up. Some people, yes, you can be a preacher or a pastor. It doesn't have the qualification for a pastor. But if you're going to call yourself an overseer and a leader, see, right now we've kind of put them all together. So whoever is the pastor is also like the head leader or the head elder of a church. And he might not be qualified for that. So he might be really good at being a pastor or a preacher, and no one's saying he shouldn't be doing that part, but that he cannot be the elder because he does not meet the qualifications. So everything has been just kind of overlooked, like, well, this is a good man, we like him. And well, it doesn't matter. I mean, either you're going to follow the scripture or you're not. There's a reason God said that. So we need to recognize that reason. And we need to understand that if we want to worship in spirit and truth, then we have to recognize what the truth is, whether we like it or not. And so this disqualifies a lot of people for different jobs, but that doesn't mean they can't still preach if they're a good preacher, because there's not the same qualifications for a preacher as there is an elder. And an elder is overseeing to make sure that everything is supposed to be as God says. And when he's talking about how you are to conduct yourself in the house of God, you have to realize, what is the house of God? It's not this place. You are the temple of God. You are the house of God. So you ought to know how to behave as a someone in it. So when we all assemble together, then we make something even more amplified than just you. So it's not a place, it's not a denomination. It is the people who contain the Lord inside of them.